We are now ready to go into templates. And yes, you're probably thinking, well, we've already been working with templates. And that is so true because every time we start a new drawing, we start with the ACAD template. Do you remember that? I know it was from like week 1 or 2, but you've technically been using it all along. So from the start menu, we went over here, and if you hit start drawing, you will immediately go to what they call the ACAD template because that's the one that's highlighted underneath. Now, if you were working in 3D, you might have this one as your default, or you might have an ACC template, which is exactly what we're going to be doing today. Or you might have one from the company you work at, like I have one for my company, Design Dynamics. So you can have your own template, or you can be using one that AutoCAD provides. We're going to learn how to create our own template so that when you are in class or you're doing a drawing for somebody, you have a template already set up to start your drawing. And what I mean by a template, as I go to the ACAD template, is one that already has standard setup settings like your unit setup. It might have your layers. If I go to layers, it might have specific layers already set up in the drawing instead of just starting with 0 and having to create a bunch. It might have line types. What is also cool is going under the annotate tab, you might have text styles and dimension styles and multi-leader styles already set up. So you don't have to do that every single time you start a drawing, which is kind of what we've been doing, right? You've had to do that all along. And yes, we've just started with text styles and dimension styles, but why not already have that in the template that you're starting? As well as those things, it also could have objects. And what I mean by objects is some templates can have like a title block already created. So you don't even have to create a title block. And I will say that companies and different design firms will have you use a template or a title block that they've created, whether it's through a template or a title block by itself that you insert into a drawing. If it's that way, it would be done a little differently. What we're going to be doing is setting up the standards right here in this template. So I am going to go to the big A, and I'm basically going to go to units by going to drawing utilities and then going to units. Yes, I could type it as well. But going to the units, designers do not use decimal. We use architectural 99% of the time. So I'm going to have that already set. If I had a different angle besides decimal degrees, I would set that up. And then the precision. The precision for the units, we'll just keep it at 1/16 for now, but remember that you could set it for a different precision just by hitting the down arrow. So my units are set. Now what I want to do is actually create some layers by going back to the Home tab and going to Layer Properties. I want to create layers that I would use for every single project, no matter what it would be. First one that I would want to always have, going to New Layer, is one that's actually called Viewport, because I'm always going to have a viewport 99% of the time to show my drawings from my model space, right? So I'm going to create that one, and I'm going to hit enter and enter again so I can just create another one right on the fly. I would also probably have one for my notes, or I may call it text. Text notes. For my business, I have it set for notes. And then I would create another one just by hitting enter and enter again and calling it dim for my dimensions, because we always have to dimension something. Otherwise, they have no idea how big it is. That would be very helpful. And then hitting enter and enter again. I am going to, in this case, have a title block, and in your assignment, you will as well. So I'm going to actually create one called TB, or title block for short, so that I can freeze or thaw that depending on if I wanted it to show or not. So I don't have it set on something else where I can't do that. And then the same thing, I'm going to create one called TB-text so that I could freeze or thaw the text within the title block and not have it set to something like my notes or another layer that's called text, because it would freeze in both areas. And maybe I only want it frozen in one versus the other. So I would make sure and have that set as well. So the last two are only for my title block. Then I would go off to the side and assign colors for those. So for the viewport, yes, it could basically be any color you want. I'm going to set it to like a bluish purple, and I'm going to hit OK. And then remember, for viewport, we do not want it to plot. So I would make sure and click the no plot here. For notes, what is the standard color of notes? It will depend on your firm or on the assignment that you have in school. For my company, I have it set to 190. I know, it's crazy, but it's my only purple, so I know it's my notes. So I'm going to do my 190 and have that set. For the dimensions, most of our dimensions for the assignments had either been red or magenta. For my company, dimensions is always set on 11. So for the example, I'm just going to use that. But make sure and read your assignment and see what colors that these are set for, because it would be just like working for a firm. You can't just set your own. You would do what your firm has as their standards. The title block, I actually want to keep white because I want it to stand out as black on my sheet. So it would be white in model space, but once I go to the layout, it's going to be black. Have you noticed that about the white? That's just a standard. And then my TB text, I'm just going to use basically what you have in your assignment, and that is it's set for blue. So I'm going to set it to blue. And these are the layers that I want to have for this template. Now keep in mind, you could have more layers. You could have like a wall layer or a furniture layer or a millwork layer or a plumbing layer or any of those other layers if you had a template for specific jobs, or maybe those are all what all the jobs actually entail. So I'm going to get out of this because I've created all my layers. But now what I want to do is go to that Annotate tab at the top and set up my text, my dimensions, and leaders. And yes, this part will be a little bit of a review, but this is so that it would have it set for every time I use this template. So I'm going to go to the text style, and I'm going to make sure it's annotative only because I would want that text annotative in my drawing. Now in my title block, it doesn't need to be annotative. It could just be a normal text. But we're going to use annotative because that's what would be used for the drawings that I would actually be using. And I'm going to say new. And let's just call this ARC because it's basically like an architectural type of text style. And then I need to assign the font, which we've been using the Stylus BT. So I'm going to go down to the Stylus BT and select that. It is checked annotative, so I can double check that. And I do want to make sure it's set to a 0 text height, so I can basically say whatever text height I want when I'm creating it. And then I'm going to say apply and close. And now I've got that set and ready to go for whenever I start using this template. But let's do the same thing for dimensions. So I am going to go to the little arrow and create a dimension style. It's going to be annotative, so it's set and ready to go. I'm going to say new, and we might as well have it match the other name that we created. Now, yes, in your assignment, you're going to have specific names. You're going to have like 4 different text styles that you're going to be creating, and you're going to create 2 different dimension styles. So make sure you name those correctly, as well as for the company that you may be working for now or in the future. And then going through all of the tabs for this, let's go ahead and start with lines. I would, in my case, have it set to be by layer. Now, ironically, they're both on the same layer, right? Or yeah, they're on the 0 layer, so that won't show up on the right, but I'm just going to make sure and do that anyway. Same thing with the extension lines. I personally like to have it by layer. It would depend on the company that you're working for. I don't need to change anything else, so I'm going to go to symbols and arrows. And then this is where you would either select the architectural tick or the oblique, depending on which maybe you prefer or the company prefers. I think in your assignment, you actually have oblique, so I'm going to use that one. And then I'm going to make sure that that arrow size is going to be the size of my text, which in this example, I'm going to use as 1/8. I will tell you that for my company, we use 3/32, so I would probably have that set that way, depending on, like I said, that company. And then do I need to change anything else? Nope. Everything else is set to go on this one. I will go to text and make sure I have my text style to be that text style that I just created so that it works and matches with my notes. My text color, I'm going to change to be by layer. There is no fill. Text height. Yes, I want to make sure and set that for the text height that I want my dimensions to be. So that would be 1/8. The vertical placement, I do want to change that from centered to be above so that it jumps above that line. And then for the horizontal, yes, I do want it centered horizontally along that line, but the text alignment over here, I want it to align with the dimension line. That is the standard for designers, whereas the other one is set for mechanical, like we said before. For the next tab of fit, I'm going to say always keep the text between the extension lines, but as you know, sometimes it doesn't fit, and so when it doesn't fit, which is why it's called fit, we either have to say, do we want it over the dimension line with a leader or over the dimension line without a leader? In this case, I'm going to say with a leader, but it could be without, so make sure and check your assignment for that one. We do have it as annotative, so that would be checked if we wanted it to be annotative. Yes, we do for this case. I do want to draw a dimension line between the extension lines. So if something does have to be moved, like the text, there's still a line created there. It's kind of important. Primary units, obviously we want to change it from decimal to architectural. So that's a no-brainer. And then that precision, how precise do we want that dimension to be? Do we want it to only go to 1/8, 1/16? Maybe that needs to be for 1/32 if it's a very precise project. In this case, we're going to keep it at 1/16. The fraction format, I like to always change to be diagonal, so it's set and ready to go. I don't need anything right here. The scale factor does have to be 1. For the 0 suppression, I do want it to suppress when it's 0 feet and just maybe some inches are involved, but I don't want it to suppress the 0 inches. So I do want it to actually say 0 inches if that's the case, like 15 feet, 0 inches. I know that can get confusing. You have to say 0 suppression, yeah, and then you can know whether to check it or not. And then I am done with all of the setting up of the dimension style. So I'm going to hit OK. And then I basically want to set it current, so it's ready to go. And then I'm going to hit close. We got 2 out of the 3 done. So let's go to the multi-leader. Same thing. We want to set that up ahead of time. So let's go to the multi-leader manager. And we are making all these annotative in this case. So we're going to select that and hit new. And we might as well have them all match in their names so that we know they all go together. And then I'm going to say continue. It brings up that wonderful multi-leader style. So the leader format, now remember, it could be straight, like it's showing on the side, or it could be a spline where it actually turns that line into a curve. You actually could have 2 multi-leader styles, like you've had in another assignment, where one is straight and then one is a spline. In this case, I'm going to make this example be straight. I'm going to make sure the color is by layer. For the symbol, do I want it to be the closed field? Do I want it to be something else? Sometimes I switch that to actually be the right angle, but it would be whatever you would want that template to have. So in this case, why don't we make it a right angle? The size. What is the size of my text? It's 1/8. So I want to make sure that the arrowhead matches that same size. So I'm going to say 1/8. Then I'm going to go to the leader structure. This one, I almost never change anything. I just make sure it says annotative, and then I go on to content. Content, remember we have 2 choices basically at the top. Where do we want M-text or do we want the block? And remember, the block is where you can actually have like either a circle or a slot or a box or a hexagon or a triangle. And that would be for those tags that we had in that one assignment. In this one, I'm just going to do the M-text. But remember, you could have 2 multi-leader styles and have the other one set for the other style. The text style, definitely want to change that to be the arc that we've created. I do want it to be horizontal. I'm going to change the text color to be by layer in this case. And then don't forget that text height. We do want it to match the text height that we have set for our notes. So that would be 1/8. I don't change usually anything down here unless I do want it to be always left justified. In this case, I don't. So I'm going to keep it like this, and I'm going to say OK. And then I can say set current and say close. So now I've actually created a bunch of settings for a template. Let me repeat that. This is for a template that we could just open and use immediately. We have our text, our dimension style, our multi-leader. This is where if you were not going to create a title block, you probably would be done. But in this template, we are going to create a title block. So in this case, I would go to layout 1 and make sure I have that title block set up. So in this case, I do not want a viewport. I want a viewport to appear in either different sizes, different shapes. So I'm actually going, in this case, to delete the title block. There are some cases where you would have it. So make sure and read your assignment to see what is the case for that one. And then, remember, it always starts at 8.5 by 11. This is where I have to say, okay, what size sheet do I want my template to be on? Well, in this case, it's not going to be 8.5 by 11. It's going to be 11 by 17. So this is where we have to go to what they call Page Setup Manager. And that is located in 3 places. One is to just right-click down here at the layout. And notice it says Page Setup Manager. I'm not going to click it here because I want to show you the other 2 places. They all go to the exact same dialog box. So if I hit Escape, I will admit that a lot of times I actually go to output because I might be exporting at the same time. So I might set it up here. And in this case, it's right here at the top, Page Setup Manager. Same exact command. And then the third place is actually under the big A. And so if you go down to print, they don't call it manager, but it's the same thing. Page setup still is the exact same command as the other two. And if I click this one, it brings up the exact same box. This is the same kind of dialog box as what you would see for print. The only difference is it won't print. So we have this, and it's telling me there is no device, there's no plotter, there's a plot size of 8.5 by 11. It's the standard that always is brought in. So I'm going to hit modify to actually modify this page setup. And remember, this dialog box, like I just said, would be exactly the same if I hit print. The only difference is when I hit OK here, it doesn't print. Whereas if I went to the print setup, it would print once I hit OK. And since there's nothing on this sheet, it would come out a blank piece of paper, right? But now I can set up the page, so it's ready to go. So I'm going to change the printer plotter to actually be going to a PDF. So it's kind of far down on the list. This might be more if you have more printers set up or whatever, but drawing to a PDF. That way, if I send it to a client, they can open it up. Everyone can open up a PDF, right? Whereas if it was sent as a drawing, they couldn't open it up. So this way they can look at it. Then the paper size. Remember, we're going to change ours to be 11 by 17. When I click here, notice how many different sizes they have built in, especially when you change it to a PDF first. You won't have as long a list if you don't set that up first. But I am going to go to the ANSI Full Bleed 17 by 11. So it's 11 by 17 sheet, rotated in the proper way, and it does allow a more printable area for a PDF. So I'm going to select that one. Notice it changes my preview up here. What do I want to print? Well, obviously I want it to print the layout that we have showing in the background. So I don't change that. If I wanted the offset to be a little bit from the origin, I would set it up, but I will tell you that 9 out of 10 times I don't change that. For the plot scale, this is where you'd always want to have it 1:1. Basically what you're saying is this plot, this piece of paper in the background, I want to print the size that it is. If you change it, it messes up with the scale of your drawings. So unless you want to print out a small piece of your drawing and not the entire thing, you would not change this. So this does need to stay to 1:1 9 out of 10 times. If you have a plot style or your company that you work for has a plot style, this is where you would change that as well. We're going to keep it to none, but notice when you click that, you could select one of either AutoCAD's defaults or something like from your company. And then the quality, yes, you could change it from normal to presentation or a draft if you just want to create just a quick print. I normally keep it on normal. And these other options, I don't change unless I need to change the drawing orientation. But like I said, I set it for 17 by 11, so it doesn't need to be changed down here. So I've got all of my page set up. Page set up. That's funny. So I hit OK. Immediately when I do that, I can see my paper changed in the background. So now my paper got bigger. So now I can just hit close. So now this piece of paper is actually 11 by 17 instead of 8.5 by 11. And now what I can do is actually create that title block. So to do that, I am going to go back to the Home tab, and I'm going to make sure that I actually use the title block layer. And remember, even though it's set for white, when I actually use it on the sheet of paper, it's black. I like that. And I'm going to actually create a line that goes around the edge of this piece of paper first, and then offset that to create the title block. So I'm going to go to line, and I'm basically going to start at 0, 0, and hit enter. Notice it goes to that corner of the paper. I love that. I'm going to set it to ortho, and I'm going to say, okay, my paper size is 17, and I hit enter. I pull it up and I say it's 11 inches high, and enter. Pull it back to the left, 17, enter, and then I can either hit close or I can go back to the beginning and hit enter. So even though it's hard to see, there is a line around the edge of my paper. It's the best way to create a title block because you can offset, I'm going to go to the offset command, by how much you want the title block to actually be set away from the edge of the paper. So in this case, I'm going to say 0.25, basically 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to click this line and pull it in, and click this line and pull it in, and click this line and pull it in. Now, I just want to create a rectangular title block on the right side of my sheet. And I don't know if you remember from day 1 or 2 or whenever it was, when you roll a sheet of paper, as designers do, especially if it's a large sheet, they roll from left to right. So what's showing at the edge of your roll is this end right here. It'll show that title block as a long rectangular piece along the roll of your paper. So I'm going to offset from here 1.5. I believe in your assignment it's 2 inches. So don't just copy what I'm doing for your assignment. This is just an example. Then I'm going to say fillet, and I'm basically going to fillet these edges so it creates that rectangular title block that I actually wanted for the right side of my sheet. Now I need to create some lines in the middle. I'm technically going to do the same thing. I'm going to offset. I want my bottom square to be 1 inch, so I'm going to say 1 and enter, and I'm going to click this line and pull it up 1. And then I technically want several more lines 1 inch apart, so I'm going to pick this line and offset it up 1. And then I'm going to pick this line and offset it up 1. 1, 2, 3, and I need one more, offset that 1, and then the last one, I'm going to hit enter and enter again. I actually want it to be 0.75, so 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to select that last line and pull it up, and it is a little bit smaller. And I basically created kind of the beginning of my lines. But what I actually want is I want to divide this square and this square into 3 equal slots or spaces. So what I want to do that is I actually want to break the line over here, because remember, this is one solid line. Now, technically, I could have created a line up from here, 1, and then create another one, 1, and then create another one, 1. But this is a wonderful chance to practice your break. You remember that command? Going up to the modify and going down to break at point, which is right here. I'm going to select this line, and I'm going to say I want to break it at this point, right here. Now I have this line, hitting escape, and this line, 2 separate lines. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to say I want to break this line now, and I want to break it at the point right here. And now I have 2 lines, one here and one here, and then that last long line right here. I'm going to break it one more time by hitting enter, selecting the long piece, and say I want to break it at this point. Now I have 3 lines right here, and I can break these 2 into 3. Do you remember how we did that? Oh, hopefully you said divide. Divide, remember, is right underneath. Whoops, having trouble actually clicking that. There we go. Divide is right under here, under the draw command. So this will allow the line to be divided into several sections with nodes. Do you remember a node is a point? Hopefully you did. So I am going to make sure that my OSNAP is set for node, so I can select that later. But I'm in the middle of the command. So it's saying select object to divide. Well, I want to divide this one right here into 3. So it says enter the number of segments. I'm going to hit 3 and enter. And then I want to do the same thing for this line. So I'm going to hit enter, do divide again, select this line and say 3 and enter. Now I can actually go to line, and it'll snap right to that node. Yes, it could snap to the midpoint. Yes, it could snap to this endpoint, but it will select node. So it divided that line and created basically 2 nodes for me. So I'm going to draw the line, hit enter, draw another one from that node over to the side, and I'm going straight perpendicular. And I can do the same thing up here. Snap to the node, go perpendicular, snap to the node, and go perpendicular. Now all of these are divided evenly, which is wonderful because it makes your title block look so professional. Now what I want to actually do is put in the logo. You might have a logo for your company, you might have your own. We're going to actually put in the ACC logo, and I have provided that for you on the D2L. So the way that we do a logo or an image is we actually go to the Insert tab right here at the top, and we go to Attach. Attach will let me insert drawings as well as images. So in this case, we're going to do an image. So I'm going to hit Attach. And mine immediately comes to all image files because I have it already set for that because I just used that a while ago. But it may come up for you as drawing. If it does, if it actually says DWG or drawing, just hit the down and say all image files, and then you can actually go and select wherever you saved your ACC logo, which as you can see is right here for me. So I'm going to select that, and it comes up, and I'm going to say open. Now when I do that, it will bring up the attach image dialog box. And there's certain things I need to make sure of. One, first of all, is it the right image? Yes, it is. And two, is it the right scale? Now, I could say that I want to specify the scale on the screen, or I could uncheck that and give it a specific scale. The rotation, no, I don't want to rotate it. I actually want it to be just like this, but notice you could do that as well, either specifying on screen or setting it here. The insertion point, I'm going to specify that on the screen so I don't have to know my exact X, Y, or even my Z coordinate for that. But the most important thing is the path type. Yes, it could be on no path, but AutoCAD has trouble with that one. It really has trouble finding it sometimes. And if you put it on full path and then you copy it to a disk and maybe load it onto another one of your computers if you have a couple, or maybe you take it to the school, then it can't find it because it wants to follow a full path. Another example would be working for a company, and maybe you work at a different desk than you're normally working at. It won't be able to find it. So if you put it on relative, it has the best way of finding it just through maybe another path that you give it or have it saved as. So I'm going to hit OK. And then notice it has the image attached to my cursor. And yes, it doesn't show the whole image, but it does show the rectangular outline of it. I want it to actually fit within this rectangular piece. And notice it won't fit. It's really large. It will be the same way for your assignment. And I don't actually want to go to the exact corner because I want to fit it kind of in the middle of this rectangle that I have created. So I am going to select just kind of off of that corner. Yes, I could move it, but I'm just going to select this point. Now it's asking for that scale factor. Well, obviously I don't want it to be 1 because that would be too big. And to be honest, I have done this in the past, so I know in this case it needs to be 0.36, but that will not be the scale factor for yours. Let me repeat that. That is not the scale factor for yours because yours is 2 inches wide instead of 1.5. So yours might be closer to like 0.5. So I'm going to hit enter and notice it pulls it right in. Not quite centered. So this is where, us designers, we kind of want to be perfectionists sometimes. So I'm going to pull it off of the ortho and just make sure it's a little bit more centered. I could get precise with my midpoint as well. But if it looks, close, sometimes I'm happy with that. But notice it has an outline around it. Well, what if I don't want the outline to actually show? There is a command that allows you to get rid of that. And it is called image frame. And just by typing it, IMAG, it brings up image frame as my first option. So I'm going to select that. And notice it right now is saying enter new value. Now, yours may be saying 1. And actually, let me set it for 1 right now, because that's probably what yours will be saying. 1 means that it has an outline. Now, if yours came in at 0, change it to 1, and then we're going to change it back to 0. And you're thinking, why? Well, it's actually a little glitch that AutoCAD has because my image is showing, and it should only show if it's on number 1 for my image frame. So it kind of got messed up and thought, oh, you really do want it to show, right? And you don't. So to have it not show, I set it to 0 and enter. And as soon as I do that, it gets rid of it. But remember, if you have it set for 0, change it to 1, set it, and then change it back to 0. Then it'll disappear like it's supposed to. I don't know why that glitch is there, but it is. So now it's set to 0. Remember that command was called image frame, and it won't show. Now I'm ready to create the text that I want to show in my title block. So I am going to switch my layer to be TB text so that I can just have that text to be in the title block. And I'm going to go down here and basically put in my text. So I'm going to go to annotate. I do want it to be a single line in this case. And this is where it's saying, what start point do you want it to be at? Well, I want to change the justification. The reason is I'm going to have all of my text right underneath each of these lines. Okay, so I technically want it to line up at the top corner. So I'm going to say J for justify and actually pick the top left, or TL in this case. So now it's saying specify the top left point. So I want it to be slightly off of the line because if it's on the line, the text won't be able to show. So slightly off the line. And now it's asking me for that text height. In this case, I actually want it to be pretty small. So I'm going to set it for 1/16 of an inch. Now it's asking for that rotation. Well, I want it to be 0. So I'm going to hit enter, and it's ready for me to put in the actual text, which in this case is going to say sheet number. And I'm going to hit enter twice. And then I'm not going to keep typing because I want these to all line up exactly and be correctly positioned exactly within that top left corner. So this is a case where I really need to use the copy instead of just trying to eyeball it all the way up. So I'm going to copy this one, and I'm going to say my base point is this upper left-hand corner. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to skip over these two boxes because I don't need text there, but I do need text here and here and here and here and here. And then I can hit enter. So now I have text all perfectly lined up both horizontally and vertically within each of those squares. And now I can just change what they're actually going to say. So let's go to the top one. This one is actually going to say sheet name instead of number. And I'm going to put a little colon at the end. And then the second one, and that gives me a chance to actually put in a long name for that. I can have it right there. Underneath that, I actually want it to say drawn by. And this is where your name would appear for your drawing. And then for this one, I want it to say checked by. And remember, look at your assignment to see exactly what yours is supposed to be for your assignment. This is just for the example. But this would be for your boss to have their initials, or your teacher if you're using it for, another class. And then this one, I actually want to say date with a colon after it. And this last one, I actually want to say revisions, because invariably we have clients who have revisions, either 1, 2, 3, or 10. I may actually have 10 lines under here, or your company may have 10 lines because you have a lot of revisions. And this is where you can put in the dates for all those revisions that were made. Then I'm going to go up here to the top, and I'm going to actually create text that goes up this direction instead of horizontally. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to annotate, go to single line, but I'm going to select this part of the corner to be the top left of the text. It's still basically lined up with underneath. You can actually, snap to that and get the tracking going, which might actually be better. So it's perfectly lined up. But I'm going to click here, and I'm going to give it the same height of 1/16. But this time, it's going to be a rotation of 90 and enter. And yes, I know it's going to go horizontally, but it's going to switch at the end, and I can say project name, and then the colon, and hit enter twice, and it will flip it to rotation of 90. So now I've got my title block all created. I do want to say that this title block, creating it this way, can still be scaled. So remember, we have a sheet of 11 by 17, right? Well, if I wanted, I'm going to open up this example. This is the same basic title block, except that I created other layouts for it. So this is on a layout of 11 by 17, which is your assignment. But what if I wanted it for an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper? Well, going to that, this one is 8.5 by 11. All I'd have to do is scale this title block by 0.77 from the origin of 0, 0, and then move it a little to the left, because it doesn't scale perfectly both vertically and horizontally. So you only need to scale it basically vertically, so it fits vertically on the sheet. Then you just move it either left or right to fit on the sheet. Hopefully that's not too confusing, but that is just by dividing 8.5 by 11, because you're going from 11 to 8.5, and so you'd scale it down by 0.77. If I wanted a sheet 17 by 22, I'd actually have to multiply it by 1.54, and then it'll fit perfectly vertically on a 17-inch high sheet compared to that 11, okay? And then the last one, 22 by 34, you're just multiplying by 2, and it'll fit perfectly on the edge of the sheet. You don't even have to move it because it's perfectly twice the size, right? So that shows you how you can actually use that for different sheets of paper. Now, please keep in mind, if I wanted to insert a title block in and not start from a template with my title block, this entire title block would be created in ModelSpace and not Paperspace. But for a template, it does have to be in Paperspace so that when you actually start drawing, you have your layout already created for you. It's set to go. So have fun in creating your template and watch the next video for blocks next.